Welcome to the Natural History Cupboard. Come on in.
And welcome back to the Natural History Cupboard podcast, the place where the weird and wonderful parts of the natural world come together. I'm your host, Gareth, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Aaron. Aaron, say hi.
Hi.
How have you been? What have you been up to?
It's been a really weird week.
Yeah, I know. We're sitting in a room that may not have even been here.
The studio almost became an aquarium.
Yeah.
We would have had we got a window there, so that would have been our viewing in to see whatever was in here. Yeah, we had a
Studio malfunction, shall we put it?
Yeah. So inside the studio, it's the utility room of the house at the moment until we get some work done. But in here with us right now is the boiler, which is why me and Gareth always look quite red in the videos.
It has got rather warm in here, but I'm waiting for the winter though.
Yeah,
we'll be fine in the winter.
But yeah, we had several leaks. It just was utter chaos in here. I had to shift out because not only is it's the utility room, but primarily it's the studio, but it's also doubling up as my kind of cave. So you can probably see sometimes, depending on the camera angle. Like we got the camera angle at a bit of a weird angle today because of some changes. You can probably see there's some nerdy stuff as well as fossil stuff, but just like it's not just the studio in here. And I had to move everything. All the podcast equipment had to come out.
At least nothing's damaged.
The games equipment had to come out. Yeah, and that is true. At least nothing was damaged. So that's how I started my week. And pretty much panicked until it was done. Yeah. But do you know how I finished the week? Because that was just as weird.
No.
So without naming names, well, as you know, I kind of moderate or admin a Star Wars Facebook page, and it all kicked off over the weekend because
the Acolyte was cancelled.
No.
Oh, okay.
Although that has been a nightmare to try and keep the peace on. That's been an absolute nightmare. Who knew the Acolyte had fans? Sorry,
I quite liked it.
Yeah, meh. It was all right. I don't think there's anything offensive about it. I just didn't think it was.
I mean, it was
very wishy-washy.
Yeah.
It was certainly the weakest Star Wars outing. But I actually had to sort out an argument between people that on that follow the page, just general Star Wars fans on the page, because Star Wars fans don't know when they've got a good thing. They never know when they've got a good thing.
Right.
George Lucas brought out the prequels. Everyone complained. They burnt their Jedi. No one remembers this, by the way, but people burnt their Jedi costumes on the side of the streets when the prequels come out. So when people tell you that they love the prequels and the sequels suck, I'm sorry. The people hated the prequels. This is not natural history related, but
no, very much. But
I actually had to, because, like I say, Star Wars fans don't know when they got a good thing going. We had one of the actors in Star Wars. He posts on there every now and then, and just on this occasion, he was posting autographs that he was selling.
Okay.
And everybody was kicking off because he was a fraud, and it's like no, guys, like he's not a fraud. It's the real guy. Admin know of him. We vet every post that goes out on this Facebook page. We know who he is and what he's up to. Don't worry about it. Oh, you can't just tell us to trust it. So I had to ask this. I had to ask to
proof of life.
I thank this guy. I'm so grateful to this guy because he did not need to do this. He took time out of his day on Sunday to record a video to prove that he is who he is.
Can we ask who he is?
I won't say the name outright, but he's the first. He says his line is Master Skywalker. There's too many of them.
Oh!
What are we gonna do? He's the first one that Darth Vader kills.
Oh my God! It's that guy.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'll show you later on.
Wow.
Off screen, I'll show you.
That's really cool.
It's cool, yeah.
Well, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, but it was very weird.
It's
been a weird week.
Well, mine's as you can probably tell, I'm not wearing a podcast t-shirt,
No, you're not.
and as I discovered when I looked at the Facebook page, not the Star Wars one that
No.
you do, our own Facebook page, and saw that you'd posted, "Oh, it's Garrett's birthday." I was like, "Oh, okay, that's fine." Thank you for the birthday wishes, everyone. That was very nice, very sweet. Thank you. So yes, it was my birthday. I got this lovely insect extinction. It's
Insect extinction.
yeah, it's kind
There
of
you
a
go.
tongue twister, but it's one of a few different like environmental t-shirts, and I thought, why not? This is quite a nice one to have on. So I thought I'd wear that today. But yes, I was up in North Wales, managed to see a bird or tick a bird off my list that I'd been wanting to tick off my list for a long while, and that's the chough.
Oh yeah.
Which are a fantastic bird. So I went to
Mm.
South Stack on Anglesey. I have been meaning to go there for years, literal years, and I actually made it to the car park once with an ex years ago, and this is after we'd been all day all over the place, and all of a sudden, after her saying yes, yeah, we'll go to South Stack, we'll go there. No, I don't want to go. We have to go now. So we're here. We're here. There are puffins over there. I want to. No, okay, right. Getting back in the car. It's just easier than having an argument. So I got to the car park and never got to see it. And for years it's just always been on my list, but Anglesy's just that little bit further and couldn't justify doing it. Anyway,
Yeah.
last year, about this same time last year, is when I went round there in a boat.
Yeah.
If you remember, on my dad's boat. And that was a heck of a lot rougher, and trying to spot anything when you're going up and down is a lot harder. This was a lot easier. But it's past the puffin breeding season. Although I did see a puffin this year when we rescued one, so
Yeah.
I've seen a puffin finally. Still want to get out to Lundy Island though. That's on my list. But I did manage to see a chough as it was being blown that way very quickly by the ridiculous winds. And in fact, you can pretty much hear in the video I'll now put behind us.
It going no.
Well, no, it's just constant wind. You can't even hear anything. The bird was making sound, but
Right.
you can't hear it. So yeah, well, I'll leave that there if it's there. If not, I'll cut it out. But yeah, it was windy as anything. Speaking to one of the RSPB people there, they said there'd been an osprey there, but with the wind like it is, I was like, it's probably halfway to
Ireland.
yeah. By that point, it's probably been blown completely out of the way. But yeah, got to go and do that, and that was quite nice.
That's cool. You had
Yeah.
a good wildlife kind of.
Yeah,
Very
I was very very pleased to see a chough. It's been I weirdly I saw an alpine chough before I saw a red chough.
Mm.
So the difference is one's yellow, the legs and feet, and one's red, and we've got the red one. It's also on my like family crest is a chough, so
Oh yeah.
I quite like seeing the bird that's on my family crest. So yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, and then today we went and picked up some reptiles for the college, so that was quite nice. A few
Yeah,
different
not jealous
new
at
look.
all of a couple of them.
Oh, they're very, very cool. Yeah, that will be new ones that the students will get to work with. So that was a fun little trip out today to go and pick up those. But yeah, it's been an interesting week. Yeah.
And once again, many happy returns.
Oh, thank you. I feel old. Oh, and that's what I did get as a lovely birthday present off my wife is a bat box.
Oh yeah.
Now I've just got to get a ladder to be able to put it up. So
Good stuff.
maybe next year. But yeah. Shall we move into this week's news?
Let's do it.
It's the news!
Right, well, we're into this week's news. Aaron, what are we looking at?
Well, every week, the weird and wonderful world of natural history offers up an embarrassment of riches when it comes to news and interesting stories. And though we here in the Natural History Cupboard are a small team, we like to keep our fellow cupboard dwellers up to date on the weird, wonderful, exciting, odd, and fun articles that are out there. Sometimes some bad news, but we try and avoid that. So let's open up the Natural History Covered newsreel and dive on into the first one. And I think that's with me. So this one comes to us from AP News. It's not one that I've come across before. And the headline is, "This bird species was extinct in Europe. Now it's back, and humans must help it migrate for winter." It's a really cool one, actually. So, hunted to extinction in the 17th century, the bold ibis, also known as the Waldrop ibis, because of a place in Germany, I think, where it comes from, made its comeback through breeding and rewilding efforts over the last 20 years. Unfortunately, the birds, lacking a sufficient population of elders to learn from, don't actually know where to migrate to. And the first exactly, the first few generations of this breeding program actually just dispersed in all manner of directions and fared very badly.
Took a guess and got it wrong.
Exactly. So this time around, what they've been doing is imprinting on the animals. The people at Waldrop team, they've been imprinting on these animals themselves, and they're making use of microlights.
Oh, the flyaway home.
Flyaway home, yeah. Exactly, to do that. To send them on their migratory way.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Right. Well, from the eye, I've got. Well, I actually went with the least irritating one of these headlines. Giant spiders the size of rats are coming to the UK, but not to your garden.
Spiders the size of rats. This is like the whole.
This is
rat the size of my dog.
Well, this is actually, if you look on a lot of the Facebook posts that came out around these and all these different reports, you had loads of people posting pictures of rats where the image is, like the rat right up against the camera. It looks huge.
Oh,
it's huge.
Yeah. Forced perspective.
Yeah. But these are not giant spiders the size of rats. These are fen raft spiders that are being released back into the wild. A very successful breeding program that's been happening all across the UK to release what was, and I say was, one of Britain's rarest spiders. And it's a massive success. These spiders are being released. The more irritating thing is the way it's being reported as they're releasing giant spiders to come and get you. But they're not. So I went with the eye because it was the least infuriating of all of the reporting. You go to things like the Daily Mail and that, and the Sun. These are
the fearmongers,
terrorist spiders that will rob your bank and do everything. But
coming over on small boats.
They'll put tiny bit in it. Conservation,
yeah.
Anyway,
so my next one comes to us from Popular Mechanics. Scientists found a 250-million-year-old miracle, a fossil with both brains and guts intact.
Nice.
Yeah, and it gets even nicer for you because this isn't like a dinosaur or ancient bird or nothing. No, this is an early ancestor of arthropods, has been found in fossilized form with guts and brains still present. The finding, which is of an animal in its larval stage, offers a fantastic window into prehistoric life and is allowing researchers to study the evolutionary links between arthropods of today and those of bygone eras.
That's cool.
It is.
So from ITV News West Country, which is our local one, but it's been reported on a few different ones. Amazing flock of nearly 80 white storks seen in Cornwall for the first time since the Middle Ages.
Wow.
And these are bigger than rats, just to throw that out there, but they didn't report that like that.
No forced perspective.
Flying giant birds. Basically a flock of 80 recently bred white storks were seen just a couple of days ago, I might add, over Cornwall, actually tracking down the south coast as far as the Lizard, which is right down towards the very tip of Cornwall.
Okay.
And then they were seen, or there was reckoned that they'd start heading back. And just today, like I said earlier, I was down in Cornwall going and picking up some reptiles and looking at a couple of different tracking birdwatch sort of sites. They were spotted a day ago, not too far from places like Redruth and that. So they're making their way back across, and they've come from Surrey, where they were bred and released, and they're now making their way back along the south coast before, probably doing the same thing that those Wallodrop ibis are doing before heading off to where they would migrate, which would be Africa.
Yeah.
So I didn't unfortunately see any. I was scanning the skies as we were driving along, and they're quite big birds, and a flock of 80 of them is quite impressive.
Yeah, it would be.
So a sign of possible good things to come next year.
Hopefully. Yeah. So my final article for this part is from Live Science, and it is Earth's days once got 2 hours longer, and that may have triggered one of the biggest evolutionary explosions in history, study suggests. So the extension of the days we experience on Earth was made possible by the gradual drifting of our moon thousands of miles further from us over the course of 2 periods. This occurs as the moon pulls at us. And as the moon pulls at us, it actually moves away. And as it moves away, our axial spin slows down. So as the axial spin slows down, that means that our daylight hours gets longer, and that during this time would have caused events of kind of oxygenation, and that is what they think led to this massive boom in the complexity of biodiversity on Earth.
That's really cool. My final one is from unofficialnetworks.com, and it's the world's largest wildlife crossing is being built over the Highway 101 in California. It's one of these massive land bridges being built over a highway to allow animals to be able to traverse between two different areas. And it's a really good sign to see, especially, I imagine, if I remember correctly, the 101 highway is like one of the busiest ones in,
I think so,
in
yeah.
California.
Yeah.
So it's basically their equivalent of the M25, I'd imagine.
More lanes though.
Which, if you've been on the M25 at any point, you'll know that the traffic doesn't move very much. So you could probably get an elephant walking through there, and you wouldn't notice.
It's busy in terms of how many people are there. Not so busy in terms of how much activity these
movement.
people are doing.
Yeah. So yeah, no, it's good to see, and hopefully it will lead to more bridges like that being built for wildlife.
My dad used to call the M25 the dead road. Those wildlife bridges are really great. The first time I ever saw them was when I was living in Barcelona, and they've got several.
All right.
Yeah, really cool. Yeah, really cool. But that just about wraps it up for this week's installment of the Natural History Cupboard newsreel. Guys, if you at home have articles of interest or news topics that you think we should cover, send them on in. You can use any of the normal ways, or you can send a flock of 80 storks or some,
yes, please.
Some cluelessly migrating Waldrop ibis.
Yes, please.
And we'll see if it's worthy of being in here. We are getting through them periodically as best we can. But with that said, we'll jump into the main topic discussion now, and that's with me. And my article comes to us from Badger Trust, and the headline reads, "Confusion and disappointment as Labour now say they will not end the Badger cull immediately." So the Labour Party.
I'm going to vote for the Laser Party.
Build us our Death Star. When do we want it? Now, the Labour Party had wildlife enthusiasts excited when they stated in their manifesto that badger culls, in order to control the spread of TB, have been ineffective.
Which we know they are.
It's true, yeah. Unfortunately, comments made by Labour MP Steve Reed on Radio 4's Farming Today have turned that excitement on its head, leading to widespread disappointment and anger. The Labour MP for Streatham and Croydon North suggested that should Labour get into power at the election, I quote, "We're not going to end any of the existing licences. Let me be clear on that. We don't want to send any sudden shocks into the system." At the time of his comments, Mr. Reid was the Shadow Secretary of State for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. And whilst I think we can all agree that we knew Labour wouldn't completely rock the boat in their first term, Mr. Reid may have underestimated the sudden shocks into the system that his own suggestion
could have at least got in the boat, you know.
The Labour Party, as we've said on this podcast previously, is not the perfect party that we would want to have in power right now, but they are a lot better than the
alternative.
Yeah, the Conservative government, who have basically caused 14 years of suffering on the British Isles. That said, it was hoped that Labour would be quicker to end the killings of badgers in order to curb TB trends. For them to allow this useless practice to continue into 2026, which is when they're going to review this, would mean a further 30,000 badgers being slaughtered. That could be avoided if they just instigate more effective alternatives. So the impact of the culls is pretty obvious. If you exterminate a badger set, eventually another badger set will, another badger
Will move in.
will move in,
Mm.
and they may be carrying TB from where they are to where it wasn't until they got there. However, if you continuously exterminate that set and everyone that keeps coming over to replace it on a island like the UK, eventually you end up with local extinctions.
You've run out of badgers.
Yeah, and areas of the UK will be badger free for the first time in 250,000 years, which is absolutely unthinkable.
Yeah.
And once again, showing that we can't tolerate a pretty small predator. Gareth, did you know that 94% of TB cases in cattle, it spread cattle to cattle?
I did actually, yes.
You did, yeah.
Yeah.
94%.
Well, it's definitely the badgers. 6% is getting in there.
Well, yeah, and that 6% isn't just gonna be
That's a
badgers,
big
that's
a big 6% as opposed to
6%.
that really tiny 94%. That's how numbers work.
Yes,
That's maths.
that is maths. That is certainly NFU maths. That's for anyone outside of the UK. That's the National Farmers Union. I just took that shot at. Don't mind if they know either. With that in mind, culling badgers is not just ineffective; it's next to unnecessary. The better options by far would be to develop more reliable testing methods, more shall we say, improved biosecurity protocols.
Far better biosecurity protocols. Yeah.
And most importantly, vaccinate the cattle.
Well, the problem with the vaccination is it doesn't show up anything. So you could have cattle that is vaccinated, but until you kill the animal, you won't be able to test it to tell whether it actually has TB.
Yeah, but
so it makes it very ineffective. But they could spend more time trying to make better versions of vaccines and things like that.
If you have a better vaccine that all the cattle are on, you don't need to worry.
Better testing is what we need.
Yeah. So I just want to read a couple bits from the end of the article. There's one that's kind of subheaded "Call for an immediate end to the cull," which kind of says about what the Badger Trust want to do. So the Badger Trust urges Labour Party to reconsider this decision, this position that they're holding, and call for an immediate end should they win, which they did win.
Yeah.
They want collaboration with scientific experts, conservation organisations.
We don't need scientists. Good.
And farming communities all together can lead to more effective and compassionate strategies for managing the disease, which is bovine TB. And that they recommend any new government starts with an honest assessment of the true level of disease in English cattle, using a test that is at least as sensitive and reliable as that used across Wales as a standard. The unreliable test English farmers are forced to use as a standard may keep infection levels hidden. And then the next bit that they talk about is subheaded, "What can you do?" So in any they say get in contact with your local.
Don't rub a badger on a cow.
Yeah. And get in contact with a Labour MP. Any interactions with Labour candidates, let them know that you are grateful that they have acknowledged that the badger cull is ineffective. Remind them and candidates from all parties that continuing to cull badgers until 2026 could kill another 30,000 badgers, potentially breaching the Protection of Badgers Act 1992, which I'm going to come on to in a minute because there's a very interesting quote on that. And it also goes against public opinion and the current public outcry. And remind them that there are more effective ways of reducing bovine TB in the UK. And just clue yourself up on the Labour manifesto and what they promise and what they can deliver. Now, I wanted to read out one last quote from all of this to you all because I feel it's quite a statement, this one. So the Badger Trust itself has said this. This is a quote from directly from them. Having now used the term ineffective in the Labour manifesto, any potential incoming Labour government could be acting unlawfully should they continue with the badger cull? Issuing new licenses to cull badgers, having publicly acknowledged that they are ineffective, could breach Section 10 in brackets 2 of the Protection of Badgers Act 1992. Something that Badger Trust will continue to investigate, and something I think we'll probably keep a keen eye on here
So
too.
potentially, then that would mean that if they continue doing that, there's potentially a legal route that something like the Badger Trust could go down.
Yeah.
To try and, at the very least,
Force their hand,
or penalise, the government into doing something, to actually acting in the interest of those animals.
Yeah. Because and quite rightly, if they've admitted that it's ineffective, they shouldn't be allowed to continue doing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is this week's article.
Oh, could I add on something that is worth?
Yeah.
Directly linking into that, if you're in the UK and have access to BBC iPlayer, or if you've got like a VPN or whatever, however you're doing it, there is something on the BBC iPlayer this week. It's Brian May from Queen.
Oh yeah.
And as you know, he is quite passionate about saving badgers, and is part of the Badger Trust, as far as I'm aware. He's got a documentary out this week called "The Badgers, the Farmers, and Me," and it's quite good. It was brought to light by to myself by Jess. She pointed it out to me the other day, that it's him talking to farmers about the ineffectiveness of culling badgers. Farmers talking about what they want out of things, and a lot of them agreeing that culling badgers isn't the way to do it, and just basically trying to have like a public discourse about the whole thing. So trying to meet people halfway on stuff, and try and protect British farming, but also protect British wildlife as well. So yeah,
that's good. Yeah, that is good.
Check that out if you've got the ability to.
But don't let anyone say that we're biased. Our bias is to the bias in the cupboard and in our lives is towards the environment. Without the environment, we won't have a planet to worry about things like who's the next president, or should we stay or leave the EU.
Yeah.
And other things. We said going into the election that Labour were the lesser of two evils, and even if the ideal party were in power now, we would slate them equally too when they mess something up. Everybody is.
Yeah.
Everybody's got to be held responsible and accountable.
That was good. Should we move into our creature feature for this week?
Let's do it.
Okay.
It's the creature feature.
Okay, well, we're into this week's creature feature, and I'm just going to come out with it easier, because this week's creature feature is an animal that I'm guessing most of you know what it is Stegosaurus. I can't believe it's taken this long to get to this quite iconic animal. In fact, I would wager that of all the dinosaurs that people are familiar with, T-Rex, Triceratops, Brachiosaurus, I'd argue that probably the fourth most well-known shape of a dinosaur would be Stegosaurus.
Probably, yeah.
You know, those are probably the four most iconic dinosaur shapes. Is those? So let's look at this spiky plant eater from the Jurassic, which, it's one that has got an interesting history to it, to say the least. I don't think I really need to describe what a Stegosaurus is or what it looks like, so we can pretty much gloss over that to an extent. And if you don't know what a Stegosaurus looks like, I could suggest probably watching something like Dinosaur Train, or...
You've just taken your first steps.
Yes, yeah. But it will become clear what this animal looks like anyway as we go on. So first, a few quick facts about Stegosaurus. It lived in the Jurassic period, the most iconic period, I would say, for dinosaurs.
The true age of the dinosaurs, isn't it? Really,
that most people are aware of. Between 155 and 145 million years ago in North America. It lived in what is probably one of the most famous formations, so rock formations of all time, the Morrison Formation. And that saw it living alongside such animals as Allosaurus,
Yep.
Brachiosaurus, Diplodocus, Ceratosaurus, and many others. Camarasaurus, various different ones. Basically, it was in probably the most well-known group of North American dinosaurs that you can come across. It's the state fossil of Colorado.
I didn't know that.
Something that I think the UK needs more of. We need county fossils or national fossils a bit more than
National fossils would be good.
Stegosaurus bones have been found on the Isle of Skye. Now, it's not the same species as Stegosaurus that you'll find in North America, but certainly very closely related, and provide evidence that these dinosaurs lived in Scotland during the Jurassic period. And the bones indicate that the one that was found was young when it died, possibly being washed out to sea after like a flood. But you'll find stegosaurs right the way through Asia, Africa, Europe. Basically, they were very widespread animals and in lots of different places. Now, Stegosaurus is different to obviously the family of stegosaurs.
Yeah.
So, coming into its discovery, and this is coming back into a part of history that we have talked about before, and that's the Bone Wars. We're back in the Bone Wars again.
Good stuff.
Stegosaurus's remains were initially found during the Bone Wars by Othniel Charles Marsh at Dinosaur Ridge National Landmark, as it would later become known. The first known skeletons were fragmentary, basically lots of little bits, and the bones were scattered across a wide area, and it would be many years before the true appearance of this animal, including its posture and plate arrangement, would become understood, or certainly better understood. The name Stegosaurus, do you know what Stegosaurus means?
I actually don't.
No?
No, I genuinely don't.
No, it means roof lizard.
Yeah,
Now,
no, didn't know that.
Does it, to you, look like it has a roof on its back?
No, but it does look like if you were to picture the animal's plates kind of pointing downwards and overlapping a bit, that looks a bit like roofing tiles.
You might be onto something there. So it had the name roofed lizard, and this was from Marsh's initial interpretation of the animal in 1877. He believed that the plates on the back of the Stegosaurus were in fact similar to those of the plates that make up a turtle shell.
Right, yeah.
So
fused.
And thus, he interpreted them as lying flat on the animal's back and forming like a roof tile, like you just said, like carapace on the animal. And what later turned out to be the tail spikes, or thagomisers, and we'll come to that meaning of that word in a bit, were also interpreted as part of the armour as well. So imagine a dinosaur that has turtle-like armour on its back, but not a shell. So think more like a pangolin, if anything.
Yes.
With spikes sticking out between the little gaps in between each. So pangolin cross porcupine is where Marsh was going with this.
Porcupine as imagined by someone who's drawing up a Sonic the Hedgehog comic.
So but at the same time, he also envisaged the animal walking on its back legs, which
bipedally?
Pretty much, yeah.
Didn't know that was what they thought of originally.
So
no.
there is a very famous original sort of sketch of this animal. Some of that original artwork, like I've got up behind us, shows the animal doing exactly that, looking very different from what a Stegosaurus should look like. So
that is very different.
Well, it gets even weirder, and this is why Stegosaurus is probably more interesting with its discovery than it is necessarily talking about the day-to-day life of a Stegosaurus. There's also another version that came around shortly after this that is basically like a skinny version of the animal appearing yet again on its two hind legs, looking a lot more like something like a Camptosaurus, another dinosaur that lived in the same time period. And it would appear that it's to do with some mislabeling of some of the artwork and calling different dinosaurs different things. But this version is basically all spikes down its back, no plates, just spikes. So if anything, like a Kentrosaurus, which is its close African cousin.
Yeah, I can see that.
But still looks nothing like what we know the animal to look like today. However, based on information that came about from a complete skeleton in 1885, Marsh published his very first full diagram of the skeleton in 1891. The publishing of the very first full diagram of a skeleton in 1891 gave us a more modern look at this very iconic dinosaur. In fact, it's an iconic look that stuck with it in paleomedia for a very long time. But there was a problem with how this dinosaur was reconstructed. And that was to do with the fact that Marsh had made another mistake. I mean, the Bone Wars is all about Marsh and Cope making multiple mistakes and us having to live with those mistakes for many, many years. He basically interpreted all the plates growing one behind each other. So instead of a double row of plates going down the animal's back, imagine them all sort of lined up neatly in almost like a sail going down. However, this actually gave him a bit of a problem. There wasn't enough space on the animal.
Right.
So, what shape is a stegosaur's back when you think of that sort of classic shape of a stegosaur?
The classic is like a super like a super exaggerated convex arch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, he was forced to dramatically arch the animal's back to be able to fit all the plates on the animal's back in these sketches, which actually led to them to the sort of shape of the animal being depicted in media for a very, very long time. Thankfully, that has since long disappeared as a view of this animal, and we have a better understanding of the placement. Although the actual placement of the plates we're still not 100% on, because they are not attached to bone.
Yeah.
They're attached to skin and muscle. So we don't exactly know where they sit. We have some ideas of them being slightly alternating with a gap obviously in between. So a left one, a right one, a left one, a right one, going further the way down the back of the animal. So that's more of what we're looking at these days. The idea of the sort of arched, all the plates in one line was sadly revived in 1987. You'd think by that point we'd have learned better, as an argument in scientific circles that never really went anywhere. It was someone who basically, I think, wanted to have their name on a paper, and it was very quickly disproved and silenced.
Cast aside.
Yeah, of the single plate lined model. However, though, this actually became popular enough for the basis of the Stegosaurus toy, which I'll be showing behind us now, in the very first toy line that Kenner made for the 1993 Jurassic Park series, which, being up at home this week, or being up at my parents', I was able to dig through some of my old toys and pull out the 1993 Dino Damage Kenner Stegosaurus.
Which is behind us now.
And you can see that the plates pretty much line up straight on this animal. However, it doesn't have that very overly arched back.
I didn't realise that was released as the line that came out for the original Jurassic Park. I always thought that was part of the Lost World line.
No, actually, I do know that. So the Dino Damage one, there were 3 in that sort of series.
Well, there's Triceratops,
the
young Tyrannosaurus Rex, who isn't actually in the movie but is in the books.
Yeah, well, this is where the Stegosaur features as well.
Ah, okay.
Because
the Stegosaur,
in the book, Alan Grant and all of them go to an injured Stegosaur, not an injured Triceratops.
Right.
The Triceratops they encounter much later on.
If I remember right, the younger Tyrannosaur is meant to be the more aggressive one as well.
Something like that, yeah. So yes, unfortunately, that out of date notion made it into pop culture and made a toy dinosaur a little bit worse for it. There was in the Jurassic Park toy line. This is going completely off track, but still Stegosaurus, a Lost World version that was more accurate to what we think of nowadays, and it looks more like the Jurassic Park Lost World Stegosaurus.
Well, the Lost World version of the Lost World model of that they used in the film is one of my, even though it's not It's not perfect.
It's much bigger than it should be.
It's huge, yeah. But that's always been my favorite. But I think it's just because of that scene, the image of
Yes.
them walking through the creek in the woods.
Yeah, it's a very, very good part of that film. It's the ooh and the ah moment
Yeah.
before the running and the biting.
The screaming.
So, yeah, unfortunately, that made the animal out to be somewhat different in that. So another big part of Stegosaur sort of mythology or mythos that goes with it
Mm.
is, well, in fact, could you tell me another thing about Stegosaurus that you would say that most people would say about this animal?
Another thing about Stegosaurus that most people would say about it.
Yeah, it's usually one very iconic thing. It's a bit more. It doesn't tend to float around as much these days.
Well, I don't know. I trying to think back to when I would have had these conversations as a kid. I remember people have always thought that it was, even though it was a herbivore, it was like a hyper aggressive herbivore because of the spikes and
Well,
stuff.
we'll get onto the spikes in a
But no,
bit.
I can't think of anything.
Well, it's the fact that they were always thought of as being dumb as a bag of rocks.
Oh yes, the brain the size of a
Size of a walnut, the
Yeah.
classic one. Thankfully, it's not really as much of a thing these days. But for a very long time, you looked in any dinosaur book, and the first thing you'd see about Stegosaurus, other than it talking about its plates or its spikes, would be that it was the dumbest dinosaur because it had such a tiny brain. In fact, it was so much so that people actually thought that the animal was so dumb, it must have had an auxiliary brain in its hips.
Well, funny you mentioned that because I was just thinking who told me that it had a brain the size of a walnut, and it was I know who told me. It was my granddad, and my granddad also told me that Tyrannosaur had two brains, one
Yeah.
in the head and one in the hips. Also, this is going off on a bit
Are
of
you
a
about to
tangent.
talk about kaiju and things
No,
like
I'm
that?
not.
Right.
I was about to say that, having young children. I don't know if you've experienced this with your son, but we have watched Blippi with my daughter,
I hate that show.
and
Blippi, if you're watching this, I hate you.
oh, he's all right. I like the
I
fact
can't stand him.
I like that he goes. He took the camera around doing a litter pick on the beach and stuff, and was talking
It's
about
fine.
everything. But no, in his dinosaur song, I'm almost certain he references Stegosaurs having a small brain.
Well, he also
I'm
calls
sure of it.
pteranodons, pterodactyls, and everything else. So yet another reason
And they
why I think
featured
he's
in
an
a
idiot.
song that is the dinosaur song, which they shouldn't be in,
Exactly.
along with Elasmosaur. That was in it too.
Do not mention that. Ugh. Anyway, back on track. So the idea of the dinosaur having two brains is a very outdated Victorian-esque view that unfortunately rolled right into the 60s and 50s and 60s. And it is all to do with the dinosaur's hips having a small gap in them, which is basically part of where the nerve cord of the body would pass through.
Mm.
Just a gap that was misinterpreted by people to basically be a
brain
secondary
cavity.
brain, which is not a thing in vertebrates. So much so that they even threw this stupid idea. I said kaiju. I was really hoping you'd go with this into Pacific Rim. There's a scene where they're talking about a secondary brain in the kaiju,
Yeah,
exactly
I
like in
remember the reference.
dinosaurs. Which, as much as that film is a brilliant yet dumb film, I love it because it is everything that
Kaiju versus
nine-year-old Gareth likes. Big monster fights big robot, big monster. What's more to like? But that bit just really irritates me. But anyway, I digress. No, they do not have a second brain. No, they are not dumb as a bag of rocks. The idea of them being dumb is relative.
I was gonna say
Cows and sheep, you could say, are dumb because they can't do some of the things that a dog or a parrot can do.
the brain does what it needs to do for survival.
Exactly. They are capable of doing what they need to be able to do with their abilities that they have evolved. If they were going to have evolved higher intelligence, they would have evolved higher intelligence. But brain size is not always a complete correlation to intellect as well. Also, the brains of dinosaurs are generally smaller than the brains of mammals anyway.
Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there. They were not dumb. They were not stupid animals that just wandered around and probably walked off cliffs. They were intelligent animals that knew how to react and be able to, well, live. Otherwise, they wouldn't have lived for the amount of time that they did.
No.
So we finally get down the body to the tail. Other than its distinctive plates running down this animal's back, the other feature of a stegosaur is its tail. And they weren't just for show. They were effective, deadly weapons for defense. You're saying about them being aggressive animals. You probably you probably wouldn't want to annoy one because it's an animal that has a lethal capacity to be able to very much ruin your day.
I reckon it's got quite a small aggro radius around it too.
I wouldn't want to try and annoy one. So, just like most herbivores, most people tend to think of herbivores being, I don't know, not very dangerous, but rhinos, hippos,
Bison.
elephant. Yeah, today I was watching a video clip of people running from bison yet again,
You wouldn't
getting
want to
too
be
close.
kicked by a giraffe, either.
No, all capable of
Horses.
dealing deadly damage. So it wasn't any different for Stegosaurus. But for a very long time, we didn't have a name for these spikes, bits on the end of their tail, until a random moment where the cartoonist Gary Larson, who basically was the person who came up with the Far Side comics.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with those?
Loosely.
Yeah.
Not so much, but yeah, loosely.
Basically coined the term thagomizer, which has now basically fallen into parlance as the term that we use for
Become the accepted.
yeah. It's still frowned upon in some scientific circles. There are purists who will say no, it's not. But it's become like the fun word to be able to use with it. I like calling it a thagomizer. It's a fun word. It was in 1982 where just one part of this comic strip had basically a bunch of cavemen, which, yes, I know, cavemen, dinosaurs, not the same thing, are looking at a slide presentation, also not a thing that cavemen did, of a Stegosaurus's tail and saying this is the thagomizer named after the late Thag Simmons, implying that the late Thag Simmons was made late because of a Stegosaurus's tail.
Yeah.
So I've just now ruined what is quite a funny joke, which I'll put up behind us. But it's a very funny, like, Far Side thing that seems to have stuck now to that, so you can call it a thagomizer, which I think is brilliant as an informal term goes, and it just shows that pop culture does seep its way into everything to an extent.
Yeah.
Now, it's likely that the tail of a Stegosaurus was far more flexible than most other dinosaurs. I've heard someone describe the way that a Stegosaurus would defend itself as being a fencer, not someone like battling with a club. So think of an ankylosaur. It's got that club tail, but its tail is quite stiff, and it's good for whipping around.
More of a swing,
but it's like hitting something with a hammer. Stegosaurus is whipping that tail around and trying to dart it in and do maximum damage. Because of that, as well, it also lacked the ossifying tendons in the tail, giving that sort of stiffness. So that tail is nice and loose and can whip round a bit like a moving flail, I guess, is a way of putting it. Meaning that it could do maximum damage in close proximity. Now, it lived at the same time as Allosaurus, and we have evidence that basically shows that Allosaurus and Stegosaurus did interact. And some allosaurs came off far worse than you would imagine. There are marks on the inside leg bones and the tail bones close to the hips of an Allosaurus that fit perfectly with the tips of a Stegosaurus thagomizer.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing to look at is the arms and the muscles that attach on a Stegosaur's arms. They are built to be able to squat down and push their weight round. So they had beefy arms for then being able to just lightly lift their back legs off the ground, whip that tail around,
Cool.
and get in close. So if a Stegosaurus was facing off against an Allosaurus, the Allosaurus would move in. The Stegosaur would be able to sort of try and anticipate that move, whip its rear end of its body round, and get that tail and get those Thagomisers right in underneath the Allosaurus and
Wow.
do 4 massive spear points of damage. And they are bone as well, so they're solid cores of bone going into that animal. So 4 stab points all at once, which would be pretty effective. And I would imagine that a lot of animals would not try to mess around with them, and they could whip themselves around pretty quick.
So, this is something I've always wondered and never actually gone and looked up for myself. But can Stegosaurus actually do that bit in like one of my favorite scenes in Lost World, where it twists its tail and can actually direct the spikes? Is it just a random whip, or can it actually purposefully think Allosaurus is on my right?
Yeah,
Spikes first.
I think from everything I've seen, from what I've read about the sort of force that tail can move at, I think it's a bit more directed. So it is like a fencing jab than it is just this wild flail of the tail going around.
Yeah, okay.
In that film as well, you see the spikes come down like downwards.
Yeah,
I don't
kind
think
of
that's.
twists it and then kind of.
I think that's probably out of the realms of possibility, because I don't think the tail would be able to twist around on itself that much.
Yeah.
But the better way to look at it would be the animal could certainly move up, twist its front body, and move its back end round and whip that tail in, and probably jab the thing from the side. Oh, and your main character's now dead. So, it would have made the film a lot more short.
Yeah.
But hey ho, that's films for you. Like I say, those Stegosaurs were nice to look at, but they weren't exactly 100% accurate. Now, I want to close things out on a controversial Stegosaurus.
Okay.
And there is a controversial Stegosaurus.
What's he done?
Well, he's not done anything. It's what people have been doing with it is the controversial bit. So this is a Stegosaurus called Apex.
Right.
Which is a very sort of like, sort of name for an animal. Apex was basically one of the most complete stegosaurs ever found. 76% complete, and there are also skin impressions that were found fossils as well.
I'm aware of this. Yeah, I think.
Yeah. You might be aware of this as well. It was then sold in July, actually, to an undisclosed buyer. This year,
okay,
for an eye-watering $44.6 million. Now, this is a dinosaur that was found by a private fossil collector on his own land, and he chose to sell it through Sotheby's. And they did this massive. There's loads of videos. If you type in Stegosaurus on YouTube, you will find 1 or 2 of these videos about this Stegosaurus Apex, and how it was sold. There are a lot of people who are not happy about it. I myself am not particularly happy about it, because yet again, it's a fossil disappearing into someone's private collection, and it's entirely down to that person whether they end up sharing the actual fossil with scientists to be able to learn something from it, which in itself is quite troubling.
Yeah.
The bigger problem, though, is a lot of museums around the world are not very well funded. Shocking, I know. And a lot of the time they rely on people coming onto their land and being allowed to take the fossils, allowed to move them out and take them off to museums. But this sets a dangerous precedent in the amount of money being spent, in that if you know that a museum coming to your land will take the museum specimen away, and you might get, some free tickets to the museum, you might get a bit of credit or something.
Most museums are free to enter anyway, aren't
Exactly. You're not going to get very much out of it. Or potentially, you could make $44 million. What are you going to do? Or are you going to charge the museum people to come onto your land who don't really have the money to do it, or offer it up to private fossil dealers who will do the same thing of packing it up, selling off, that sort of thing. it does set a dangerous precedent for fossil hunting around the world for things like dinosaurs, and it's these big
Yeah.
iconic specimens that lead to things like this happening. So it's something that could potentially set a dark tone for fossil hunting for many years, and hopefully this person who now owns this stegosaur loans it out to a museum and lets them do whatever they need to do it, and they can then have their name on it or something.
Yeah, you're kind of relying on
Goodwill.
other people's morality, because even
Yeah.
as you were saying the two options in my head, I was thinking, well, there is a third option, because if I found a tyrannosaur skull, ain't no way I'm selling that to anyone. I know
No.
that, is it Leonardo DiCaprio has a tyrannosaur?
There's a lot of celebrities have private
He ain't
collections.
selling it to anyone, not for. I mean,
44 million.
desperate
I think I
times
would.
maybe, but no, yeah, but that's 44 million. Like it's money, isn't it? Like
It's money, but it's
a
money that
tyrannosaur skull. That's something that is.
there. Yeah, you're gonna have that for life. But put it this way, Aaron, if you had $44 million, sorry, $44.6 million, you could quit your job tomorrow. You
Yeah.
could do whatever the heck you wanted, which could be full-time fossil hunting. So you might find another T-Rex skull. You could buy a replica one. You could even have the original one from the Jurassic Park film if it's still in it. If it still exists. Basically, you could then just do what you wanted to do.
No, in my head I was kind of giggling a bit because I was thinking I think my morality is not that great, because I would obviously loan it to the museum. I wouldn't sell it. I'd loan it to the museum, but there would be the small print that says you do have to give this back to me. This is my tyrannosaur skull.
Well, I think a lot of ones that are in museum collections like that are under those sort of loan conditions.
Right, fair enough. So I'm
You're not giving it up.
too seedy.
No, I don't think that's too bad. I would, if I found something like that, I would say, all right, you can have it in the museum, and yeah, you can have it there for free. However, I would like a complete cast of the entire thing done. I want a cast of it. You can keep the original there for scientific purposes and for display, but I would like a complete copy of it just so that I have got a stegosaur skeleton or whatever, something like that. And I'd like my name on it. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
But that would be how I'd go about it. Anyway, Stegosaurus is one of those really iconic dinosaurs, and like I said, I could have talked more about the habitat and what it lived on. We all know that it was a plant eater that lived in the Jurassic period at the same time as a lot of very iconic dinosaurs. And it in fact adds to this quite large list now that we've built up of our Morrison formation dinosaurs. We've got Allosaurus, we've got Stegosaurus, we've got Diplodocus, Brachiosaurus. So we're building up the Morrison formation.
Are we representing Jurassic animals better than the Jurassic franchise did?
Currently, yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
So there's just one other stegosaur that I think is worth shouting out as well, and that is the Stegosaurus that is in the Natural History Museum in London, and that's Sophie the Stegosaurus, and it actually sort of, I would say it links nicely to the other previous Stegosaurus apex, because it's called Sophie after the daughter of the hedge fund manager that helped secure the funding for the Natural History Museum to be able to obtain this Stegosaurus.
Oh, okay.
So basically, someone with a conscience and wanting to do good for a museum did exactly that. And this is the most complete Stegosaurus in the world, 86%. So
that's good.
Yeah. And it's a really cool Stegosaurus to go and see. It's in as you walk into the Natural History Museum through one of the entrances, not the main one that has the blue whale, but it's as you go in. There's an escalator that goes up, takes you up into the geology gallery through all the planets. So it's right there as you walk in, and is worth going to see if you're in London to go and see that. So yes, that is Stegosaurus, the roofed lizard that has one heck of a tail and would certainly ruin your day if you annoyed it. So yeah,
I do have one question about their life history, because I'm always interested to hear it. Is there any evidence that they were like any hard evidence that they were herding animals? Because that's
Not
how we always assume that they are.
not as far as I can find.
Right.
But then again, you get people depicting them in herds, and then you get people depicting them as sort of
Solitary.
solitary animals, a bit
Yeah.
like ankylosaurs.
Yes.
People seem to depict them as either one or the other. I don't think there's any solid evidence, not that I'm aware of, but I could be wrong. And if I am, I will. I'll update us at
Okay.
some point. But yeah, let's move on into our emails for this week.
Let's do it.
Bing! You've got mail.
Ooh, it's an email.
Right, well, we're into this week's emails. I'll start things off with last week's question, which was, what animal would you base your personal philosophy on and why? We had some good answers for this one. My other half has put a sloth. Lives slow and steady, but if you mess with me, I'll introduce you to my claws multiple times. Danny Kevin has put a grizzly bear. See, I was trying to go along the same lines
Yeah,
with
I
this one.
did read. Yeah.
He's put summer eating nice healthy fresh food, freshly caught salmon, etc. As soon as summer is over, I just want to eat loads of food and go to sleep. Plus, I always have an itchy back. You replied to that saying that's not a bad shout, and I think
No.
that's it's up there with some of the best ones. Jen Babs has put a buzzard. All the other birds can give you grief, squawking and carrying on at you, and they just crack on with what they're doing.
Yeah,
Which is
yeah,
fair enough,
that's
yeah.
fair, yeah.
James Welch has put. Oh, I wonder if you can guess what he's put.
I reckon he's finally decided that the tiger is the superior cat. So he's picked lion.
Yes, of course. I'd aspire to be a lion. Reality may be more like a leopard tortoise, though. I mean, I actually think base your life on a lion, that'd be a really short, stressful, horrific life. Leopard tortoise is probably a far better
Brutal
mentality.
life.
But yes, that was last week's question. This week's question, jumping off from where I was looking at the state fossil of Colorado, which is Stegosaurus. Well, let's open it up a bit more. Anyway, now I know that some countries do already have national fossils, but what do you think should be your country's national fossil? It doesn't have to be a dinosaur. It can be prehistoric. Anything really, basically a prehistoric species that is found as a fossil. What would you have? So I'm going to say, Aaron, give us your national fossils for England, Scotland, Wales, and then Britain as a whole. Oh, and Northern Ireland and Ireland as well. Although you may struggle with Ireland for some of their areas because they don't have as many fossil species.
Okay. I think I can do this. So for Wales, I would go with the early Jurassic Coelophysioid Dracoraptor.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a cool name.
Yeah.
For England, I'm gonna give Mary Ann in the bump for this, and it can be her ichthyosaur. That one for England. I'm gonna skip over Scotland just briefly because I'm racking my brain trying to think of. Do you know what? On behalf of your creature feature, the Stegosaurid from Scotland can be the Scottish one. For Britain, I'm sorry, I've got to lean on my biasness for animals that kill, and it's going to be Baryonyx.
Okay. Yeah.
Baryonyx for Britain.
What about Ireland?
I've got no clue. Leprechaun. Four-leaf clover.
Oh my god. Fair enough. Well, I agree with you on some of them. I disagree with you on others. Scotland, I'm gonna say Elginia, which is a Permian era reptile that has weird little horns on its head.
Notice that neither of us for Scotland put down like plesiosaur or elasmosaur found in a lake.
No, because elasmosaurs are not native. Were not found in Scotland,
and they didn't live in lakes.
Yeah, and I don't think there's very many plesiosaurs from Scotland, if any, as far as I'm aware. So Elginia for Scotland. Yep. I will say Pantidraco for Wales, because I like that one just as much. There's a couple of cool dinosaurs from Wales. England, as much as I'd like to say ichthyosaurs, I'm gonna say. Actually, no. Sorry. I will say baryonyx for England.
Okay, where are we going with Britain then?
Well, Ireland, Megalosaurus, the Irish elk.
Ah, damn.
You missed out on an obvious one there.
Not only missed out, but I feel a little bit ashamed of my answer, Leprechaun. I think that was maybe a little bit bad character of me.
So for the UK in general, I'm going to say Megalosaurus, the original dinosaur.
Yeah, okay,
That one
that's good.
That should be the one that kicked it all off, basically, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's an important fossil. Yeah, okay.
So yeah, that would be where I go with mine. But let us know what you think your country's national dinosaur should be. You can do that on our Facebook page where that's going up. You can also message us on our YouTube page as well in the comments and let us know if you think it should be anywhere different, or if you disagree with the one that your if you disagree with the one that your country currently has as its national fossil. So yeah, but that's not the only way you can get in contact with us. You can also get in contact with us on our email as well, which is the nathistorykcupboard@gmail.com. And Aaron, I believe we've got some emails this week, or we might have just saved them up for a week or two to throw together.
Yeah, we've actually got a few, but we've only got time for these two, and I'll get to the other next week. Cool. So yeah, our first email comes to us from one of our newish followers, and whose name is Ren. And actually it comes with this really cool photo that I'm going to put behind us now. Hello, fellow cupboard dwellers and Professor Cupboard, which I assume means you. I am a more recent cupboard dweller, listening since the Wycent. So welcome. I think
That's one of our YouTube first episodes, yeah.
But have been listening to them in a rather unordered fashion. We are rather unordered.
Yeah.
So I am quite eager to see how you are going to make my Sunday next week. I was wondering what your favourite episodes are and which ones you listen back to the most. Best of luck with any future batches of Weta. Kind regards, Ren. P.S. I made a life-size paper atlas moth. Planning to do the caterpillars next.
Very good. Give you a minute, shall we?
This could go for a while.
Yeah. Right. Well, I'll answer first then, shall I? Favorite episodes? It's always hard to tell, actually.
It's not the Weta.
It's to me, favorite episodes can be everything from ones that record well, as in everything works, everything's smooth, and I feel I get a good delivery of like the stuff that I'm putting across. To episodes that perform well. I suppose that's the other way of looking at it. For instance, the you're gonna be like this for the rest of the episode, aren't you? You're gonna be ridiculous.
Try not to.
For instance, the Huon Pine episode, that was by far our single most popular episode that came out, which was a total surprise that it just shot up and had over 600 views in a week, which now you're just laughing at how good our episodes are. So I really enjoyed that episode because it was an interesting tree to talk about. It was actually one by our Patreons as well, suggestions. But at the same time, I also really enjoyed some of the episodes that we've done where we've interviewed people. Now we've not really done that this year.
No, there are two that I'm working on. It's just been a bit of an odd year this year.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to pick. We're almost at the 200 mark. We're at 180 something now. So it's hard to pick favorite episodes to really sort of hone in on. other than the Hue on Pine, which I thoroughly enjoyed for the fact that we had a massive bump in numbers, I quite enjoyed the Thylacine episode and also the Dodo episode as well, because I think I put quite a bit into those. They're quite a way back in our sort of our episode lists now, but yeah, those are some of the most fun ones, I think.
Mm.
What about you?
For me, there's so my favorite episode. My favorite episodes are the ones that don't need much editing.
Well, that's quite true, I suppose. Yeah, ones where we don't have to cut out you laughing for half an hour.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That is true. I also like the more interactive ones that
Yeah.
we've done. I like the ones that are either narrative driven. The creature features are either narrative driven or kind of like multiple choice survival driven. The ones where we get to
Where I usually
interact more.
end up eating or something. Yeah.
As opposed to like the data dump ones, because sometimes, I don't know if it actually comes across this way, but sometimes when I'm actually doing the creature feature, I get very self conscious that people just hearing this and thinking it's a data dump.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah.
by the way, if you do feel that any particular ones are a data dump, I don't mind you saying, because that's only going to improve us. So yeah, my favorite ones for creature features are the ones where they're a little bit more interactive. If I was to pick out a couple that I particularly liked, for me, Tyrannosaurus Rex and the kind of sequel Triceratops. I like the way that they worked with the time travel.
Yeah. Yeah.
All jokes aside, I did like your wetter one.
Good.
And Drew with his great crested newt. I think that was a really good one.
That was a good episode as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I also like the quiz.
Yes.
Which is why we are seriously talking about bringing the quiz back. Because
I was actually in talks about that today.
Good.
So
Good.
there's stuff in the works.
I think 200th episode is going to be one to look forward to, but we haven't done that yet. So, but I have to say my absolute, and you touched on this already, my absolute favorite episodes just happen to be all the ones that we had an interview on.
Yeah.
I won't say which are my favorites because that would be unfair. I will say that there have been some really
eye-opening stuff. Yeah.
Eye-opening, some really interesting, some just damn fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've been really truly privileged with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's where we're at with those. But well, feel free to let us know which your favorite episode is.
Yeah, please do. And that doesn't just go to Ren, I suppose. It goes to anybody. Just if you've got a favorite episode, please shout it out at us. Also, the picture that you've been seeing behind us whilst we're talking, that's the Atlas moth that Ren sent to us. They took a photo of the Atlas moth that they'd made, and I have to say, looking at it, I'm really excited to see what the caterpillar looks like when you get round to that. So keep us updated on that, and I hope you continue your journey with us in the cupboard.
Yeah.
Moving to the next email. This one comes to us from one of our Patreon supporters.
Yeah.
Jen, who's always really nice to always sends us really nice messages and talks to us a lot, which is appreciated greatly. And Jen's one's actually put a subheading for this one. It says reconnaissance for the cupboard. We got our own little agent out there. She says, hello lovelies. Well, because my husband works bank holidays, I've decided I need to go on an adventure this week. If I didn't, I would be stuck doing housework, which, let's face it, is too dull. Yes, I've done a lot of housework lately, and so has my partner, and we both agree it's very dull. So I may take myself to Woollerton Hall, only for a couple hours from Manchester. They have a natural history museum and a deer park. I'll report back. So we'll look forward to hearing back from you on that. She also says, also thrilled to say I have my tickets for TechZooCon, which I'm not 100% familiar with. I vaguely know about it, and I'll have to, before you update us on that, between now and then, I will brush up on it.
Hang on, TechZooCon.
As in Tetrapod Zoology.
Yes,
conference. She's hoping to do both days this year, just looking for reasonable accommodation in the Big Smoke. check out this lineup, which we will, because like I say, I'll brush up. I've not looked up on it for a while. I actually think it's pretty good value for money, as there are so many great speakers and really friendly. I'll try and drop in. I'll try and drop in hashtag the Nat History Cupboard at every opportunity, and wear my branded jumper. Oh, so she's one of the branded jumper. I had wondered. Oh, excellent. Yeah, do wear the jumper. Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, and yeah, I will.
We'll have to
look
try
into
and get to that ourselves next year.
Yeah, that would be really good.
Mm.
But that's our emails for this week.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that one of them was our Patreon, because, well, there's another way you can get in contact with us, and that is to become a Patreon, which Erin is going to tell us about now.
Absolutely. Every week, we like to give a little love back by shouting out the names of our wonderful Patreon supporters. And these are the cupboard dwellers who have committed a financial contribution to the running of the podcast. And we are grateful, needless to say, beyond words.
But we will use words.
But we will try and use words. And those people are Fogtober, Jen Greenhall, Connie P, Chelsea McKee, Nick to Nick, and Justin Knife. Guys, your financial contributions are actively helping us here to improve things, or to get out and about on excursions and stuff. And like I said, we really can't thank you enough. Now, we appreciate all of our cupboard dwellers and everything you do for us, whether it's watching or listening, liking, sharing, subscribing. All of those things really help. If you can leave us reviews, that's amazing, because it helps word of mouth get out there, and it helps us in the algorithms. So please do that wherever you want to do that. But if you were thinking that we might be worth supporting on a Patreon level, there are two ways to do that, and that's the Nature Nerds and the Animal Ambassadors. And you can find out more about that on the actual Patreon site itself. But with that said, just once again, thank you so much.
Yeah, massive thank you. Like Erin said, you can get in contact with us a myriad of ways. You can also help us out in a non-financial way by liking, subscribing, commenting, rating us, all those different things on all the different platforms that we're available on. And just watching or listening is also really good as well. It basically pushes us up there.
Yeah.
So a massive thank you to absolutely everyone. And that pretty much brings us to the end of this week's episode, I think.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So big thank you, Aaron.
Thank you very much.
It's all right. Big thank you, Boiler, for not exploding on us. It's not really said anything, but I didn't expect much. And a big thank you to you at home for listening. And we will see you next time here in the Natural History Cupboard. Bye. One does not simply swing at an Allosaurus without spiking it somewhere where it's really going to hurt.